Karen lived in a cozy neighborhood, where everyone knew each other. She liked the calmness of her street, but lately, something had been bothering her. It was her neighbor, Mr. Thompson, who had taken to leaving piles of nuts out in his yard for the squirrels. At first, Karen thought it was harmless fun. After all, squirrels were cute little creatures that darted around collecting acorns and chasing each other up the trees. But as the days passed, she grew more and more irritated. Every morning, Karen would peek out her front window to see squirrels invading her beloved garden. They dug in the flower beds and scattered dirt everywhere. "Why can't he just leave them alone?" she muttered to herself. The nuts attracted too many squirrels, and their playful antics were starting to feel like a noisy invasion. One day, after spotting a particularly cheeky squirrel nibbling on a flower bud, she decided she had enough. The situation needed fixing before things got out of hand. Karen imagined an unkempt yard filled with rowdy squirrels causing chaos and munched-out plants. "I'll put an end to this," she said firmly. With determination in her heart, Karen made a plan. She would call animal control to complain about the nut situation. Surely they would help her stop Mr. Thompson's questionable hobby. Little did she know, this would lead to an unexpected twist in their neighborhood story. Mr. Thompson was known as the friendly neighbor with a big heart for animals. He had lived on the block for years, always ready to lend a hand or share a smile. His love for nature and wildlife was evident in his well-kept garden, filled with colorful flowers and tall trees that provided shade for everyone. While Karen saw the squirrels as pests, Mr. Thompson viewed them as delightful little visitors. Every morning, he would enjoy his coffee on the porch, watching the squirrels play. To him, leaving out nuts was simply sharing a little joy with the creatures he adored. "They brighten up my day," he often said to anyone who would listen. He believed that feeding the squirrels brought them closer to nature and helped teach children about caring for animals. As word spread of his squirrel feeding, kids from the neighborhood began to gather around his yard, giggling and pointing at the furry acrobats leaping from branch to branch. Mr. Thompson loved this interaction. He would toss a few more nuts their way just to see the smiles on their faces. Inspired by his little friends, he decided to take things a step further. He built tiny wooden mailboxes decorated with bright colors and cheerful designs. Inside each mailbox, he left notes with fun facts about squirrels and small treats that made the children squeal with delight. Mr. Thompson thought of it as creating a squirrel post office, adding even more charm to his backyard spectacle while unwittingly stirring up Karen's frustration even further. As the days passed, Karen's frustration only grew. Every morning, she would peek out her window, and there they were, squirrels darting around her garden like little tornadoes. They dug up her flower beds, uprooting her carefully planted blossoms, and scattered dirt everywhere. It felt as though Mr. Thompson's kindness was turning her once peaceful yard into a chaotic playground for the furry creatures. "No more nuts," she shouted one day when she spotted a particularly bold squirrel gnawing on the edge of her prized tulips. The sight made her blood boil. She couldn't understand how Mr. Thompson could enjoy watching the squirrels while she was left to clean up after them. "He doesn't realize that he's attracting too many," she grumbled to herself, pacing in her living room. The noise became unbearable, too. The chattering of squirrels seemed to echo in her ears, keeping her awake at night. Karen imagined what might happen if the squirrel population kept growing. Would they invade her home next? The thought made her shiver. Determined to regain control of her yard, she decided enough was enough. If Mr. Thompson wouldn't stop feeding them, she would take action herself. She began to compile a list of reasons why his actions were harmful, not just for her garden but for the neighborhood as a whole. With each passing day, her resolve strengthened, pushing her closer to calling animal control. Surely they would see things her way and help put an end to the squirrel madness. One sunny afternoon, Mr. Thompson was inspired to take his squirrel feeding to the next level. He looked out at the joyful chaos in his yard and thought, why not make this even more fun? With that idea in mind, he headed to his workshop and began crafting tiny wooden mailboxes. Each mailbox was painted in bright colors, adorned with cheerful designs, and would surely catch the eye of any child passing by. As he worked, he imagined kids giggling and gathering around the mailboxes, excited to see what surprises awaited them inside. He filled each little box with nuts and left behind handwritten notes sharing fun facts about squirrels. Did you know squirrels can leap up to 10 times their body length? One note read. The idea of turning squirrel feeding into an interactive experience excited him. When Mr. Thompson finally placed the mailboxes around his yard, it didn't take long for the neighborhood kids to notice. They flocked to his garden, eyes wide with wonder as they discovered the colorful boxes. Laughter echoed through the air as they opened each mailbox to find treats waiting for them. The children eagerly shared their findings, creating a delightful buzz throughout the block. For Mr. Thompson, this was not just about feeding squirrels, it was about fostering a sense of community and encouraging children to learn about nature. However, unbeknownst to him, his charming, squirrel post office was only adding fuel to Karen's fire of frustration as she watched the scene unfold from her window. The next day, excitement filled the air as the neighborhood children gathered around Mr. Thompson's yard, drawn by the colorful mailboxes that had appeared overnight. With wide eyes and eager smiles, they approached the boxes, their curiosity bubbling over. "What do you think is inside?" one child asked, practically bouncing on his toes. As they opened the first mailbox, a chorus of gasps erupted. Inside, they found not only a handful of shiny nuts but also a small note written in Mr. Thompson's neat handwriting. "Hello, friends. Did you know that squirrels can eat fruits and vegetables too? Enjoy your treats." The kids giggled and shared the fun facts with each other, delighting in the little surprises. One by one, they opened each mailbox, finding more notes and snacks waiting for them. Each message was different, filled with interesting tidbits about squirrels and nature, like how they can find their way home using landmarks. The children were captivated, their imaginations sparked by this new playful twist on feeding animals. They began to play games, pretending to be postal workers delivering snacks to hungry squirrels. Laughter echoed through the neighborhood as they ran around, creating stories about their furry friends who lived in the trees. For them, it was more than just a way to enjoy treats, it was an adventure that brought them closer together and encouraged them to appreciate nature. Unbeknownst to them, Karen continued to watch from her window, her irritation growing as she observed the joyous chaos blossoming in Mr. Thompson's garden. After many days of watching the joyous chaos from her window, Karen finally decided she had to take action. The children's laughter and the sight of squirrels darting through her garden felt like a constant reminder of her growing frustration. She could no longer tolerate the mess and noise created by Mr. Thompson's well-meaning antics. "This has gone too far," she declared, clenching her fists in determination. That evening, she sat down at her kitchen table, her mind made up. With a pen and paper, she began writing down all the reasons why Mr. Thompson's actions were a problem, not only for her but potentially for the neighborhood as a whole. "The squirrels will just keep multiplying," she reasoned out loud, envisioning a yard overrun with them. "And what if they start making nests in my home? I can't let it happen." With her list in hand, Karen picked up her phone and dialed animal control. When the officer answered, she took a deep breath and explained the situation as clearly as she could. "There are too many squirrels. They're ruining my garden," she insisted, hoping her urgency would be understood. The officer listened patiently before assuring her that someone would come to check it out. Relieved, Karen hung up, feeling a surge of hope. She believed that soon enough, animal control would put an end to Mr. Thompson's squirrel-filled antics, and peace would finally return to her garden. Unbeknownst to her, however, this decision would lead to some unexpected consequences for everyone involved. The next afternoon, just as the sun began to set, Karen spotted the animal control vehicle pulling up in front of Mr. Thompson's house. A mix of nervousness and anticipation filled her stomach as she watched two officers step out of the truck, laughing and chatting with each other. They appeared ready to take action, or so she hoped. As they approached Mr. Thompson's yard, their eyes widened at the sight of the colorful mailboxes. "Well, this is something you don't see every day," one officer exclaimed, grinning at the tiny structures dotting the garden. The other officer pulled out a phone and began snapping pictures of the whimsical, squirrel post office. Karen stepped outside, clutching her list of grievances tightly. "Excuse me. I called about a squirrel problem," she called out, attempting to redirect their attention. The officers turned to her, still chuckling at the cheerful scene unfolding before them. "We're here to help," one officer said reassuringly, though he continued to study Mr. Thompson's handiwork with a smile. "But it looks like your neighbor has created quite a little attraction for the local kids. And squirrels." Karen felt her frustration bubbling again as she tried to explain how messy and noisy things had become with all those squirrels around. However, instead of taking her complaints seriously, the officers seemed more interested in joining in on the fun rather than addressing her concerns. Their laughter echoed through the air as they admired Mr. Thompson's creative approach, leaving Karen feeling increasingly isolated in her worries. As the animal control officers continued to admire Mr. Thompson's whimsical, squirrel post office, they snapped picture after picture, capturing the joy and creativity of the scene. "These are too good not to share," one officer exclaimed, grinning widely as he posed next to a particularly colorful mailbox. The other officer joined in, capturing the delighted expressions of children peeking inside the boxes. Soon enough, their phones lit up with notifications as they posted the pictures on social media, tagging their local animal control page. "Check out this incredible squirrel post office. Who knew squirrels could have such fun?" they wrote in their post, along with a series of cheerful hashtags like #SquirrelFun and #NeighborhoodJoy. Within moments, likes and comments began pouring in from friends and followers who found the idea delightful. Back at her house, Karen noticed the notifications on her phone about the posts. Frowning, she clicked to see what all the excitement was about and was taken aback by the flood of enthusiastic responses. People loved Mr. Thompson's project. They praised his creativity and even suggested organizing community events around it. Feeling even more isolated, Karen shook her head in disbelief. "Can't they see how ridiculous this is?" she muttered to herself as she read through comments from neighbors who were now rallying behind Mr. Thompson's charming initiative. The amusement of social media only deepened her sense of frustration, making her feel like an outsider in her own neighborhood. As the days went by, the community's reaction to Mr. Thompson's squirrel mailboxes grew increasingly mixed. While many neighbors rallied around the cheerful initiative, celebrating its creativity and the joy it brought to local children, Karen found herself feeling more isolated than ever. She overheard conversations at the park where families gathered, chatting excitedly about organizing squirrel post office events. "Oh, it's such a wonderful idea," one neighbor exclaimed. "We should create a neighborhood day where everyone can decorate their own mailbox." Children chimed in, eager for activities while their parents shared stories of how much fun they had watching squirrels scamper about. However, not everyone was convinced by the enthusiastic response. A few neighbors quietly approached Karen, expressing sympathy for her plight and voicing concerns about the growing squirrel population. "I completely understand your frustration," one woman said softly. "It can be overwhelming when wildlife starts taking over." These supportive voices gave Karen a small sense of comfort amidst the chaos. Despite this support, the loud cheers for Mr. Thompson's project rang far louder in her ears. Seeing children laughing and playing around his yard as they engaged with the mailboxes only deepened her irritation. "Why can't they see how ridiculous this is?" she thought bitterly. The contrast was painfully clear. While some adored the playful spirit of the mailboxes, Karen felt like an outsider, fighting a losing battle in a community that thrived on whimsy and joy. As the days turned into weeks, Karen continued to grapple with her frustration but also found herself observing the joy that Mr. Thompson's squirrel post office brought to the neighborhood. One sunny afternoon, she decided to take a walk and found herself drawn toward his yard, where laughter and excitement filled the air. Children were running around, giggling as they played games inspired by the mailboxes, while squirrels happily scurried about. Karen hesitated at first, but something inside her shifted as she watched the pure happiness radiating from the kids. It reminded her of simpler times when joy was found in small things. In that moment, she realized that while she may not have liked the idea of squirrels in her garden, the community's delight was undeniable. Perhaps, instead of seeing Mr. Thompson's actions as a nuisance, she could view them as an opportunity for connection and fun. What if she joined in? Maybe she could even help with decorating a mailbox or organizing a neighborhood event. Feeling a spark of inspiration, Karen took a deep breath and approached Mr. Thompson. "Hey, I think your squirrel post office is amazing," she said with a smile. To her surprise, he welcomed her warmly and invited her to join the fun. As they chatted and laughed together with the children and squirrels around them, Karen realized that sometimes joy can come from unexpected places, even when it initially feels like a problem. She felt lighter and more connected to her community than ever before, embracing the whimsy that had once frustrated her so much.